Okay guys, welcome back. We're going to jump straight in and we're going to be looking at that player class now, okay? So, underneath, directly under where we've made our enemy spawner, we're going to do our class and player, and that is also going to be a sprite, okay? So it's going to be pygame.sprite.sprite. And we want to initialize that like we did in the last one. And this just lets us say what arguments we want our player to actually have. So he's going to take a screen width and a screen height. Okay, so that player knows when they're being drawn where to be drawn. And it also means that we can change the size of the window, and the player class will always be drawn in the center. And then we're going to do this super init again. So and like I said before, that just allows us to inherit everything that the sprite class has. So the sprite class has pre-programmed rectangles and things like that, and the ability to blitz and things like that. That's what happens with our sprite class. So if we use this super, we can inherit all that and we can use that, okay? Like I said, have a little look online if you want more details on inheritance and super. So our player class needs an image. I made a little pixelated image of a little gun kind of thing that you can use if you like, but feel free to use your own one. That's a 32 by 32 image there, so it's not difficult to kind of find something which is going to fit those kind of boundaries or make your own. So it's image.load, and the image we want to load is player.png. Just make sure that when you're doing all this, it's all saved in the same folder. I think I said that earlier, but you're going to always run into issues if they're saved all over the place. That's the first error to check as well. If you're putting your own stuff in, make sure that it's actually saved in the right place. So we're going to make a surface here. So surface, and that's going to be 32 by 32. So this is basically a little surface for us to draw our player onto. So surface is another predetermined Python class that we can use, and it's going to be 32 by 32 there. And then we're going to make a rectangle for it as well, and we're going to do that by getting the size of the surface, and then we're going to work out where it's where to put that rectangle. Okay, so we're going to do self dot surf dot get underscore rect, and so that gets the size, so that makes a rectangle 32 by 32, but it doesn't say where to put that. So our rectangle has a attribute called mid bottom, and it's the middle of the bottom of the rectangle, and we're going to set that to equal to the screen width divided by 2, and that's the x-axis across, so that's going to be in the middle, and then the y-axis we want to set that to the screen height. So our screen height there, that will be set to 600, so 600 will be the bottom position, so it's going to be 150 by 600, which is going to be the middle bottom of the screen. And like I said, it's nice to do it this way, because then if we change the size of the screen, our player will always be in the middle. Now the last attribute we want to do is self.fired, and I'm going to set that to false. I'm not sure if I end up using that in the end. We'll have a look at that. It may be that we don't need it. I may have worked around how to do it without that. Anyway, so our next bit we're going to do is we're going to define the move method for our player. So we're going to do def move, and that's going to take self, and it's going to take screen width and screen height. And then we're going to actually look at what keys are being pressed. Okay, so this is a nice thing that Pygame will allow us to do. It's going to allow us to return what keys are currently being held down. So pressed key equals this little handy function called Pygame dot key dot get underscore pressed, open and close bracket. Okay, so that's going to return whatever key is currently being pressed It's going to save it into this pressed key variable. So what we're going to do here is we need to basically make it so that our player can never go off of the screen. So remember, our player is basically this little rectangle. So if the left side of that rectangle, the left position of that rectangle is ever equal to 0, it means they're at the very left of the screen. If it's ever equal to screen width, which could be set to 300 or something like that, it means they're at the very right of the screen. Sorry, if they're right position, they're going to be on the very right of the screen. So we obviously, once they get to the very left-hand side, we don't want them to be able to just keep going continuously off the screen. We could program it so they come onto the other side of the screen, but we'll leave that for today. We just want to stop them from going off the left-hand side of the screen. So we're going to do that with this this bit of code here. So we're going to say if the left-hand side of that rectangle, so self.rect.left, it has to be greater than 0. So if that rectangle is greater than 0, and if they've pressed down the left key, we're going to allow them to go left. So if pressed underscore keys is k underscore left, we're going to do self.rect.move underscore IP, so move in place, and we're going to move -5, which, so this is our x-axis, we're going to move 5 pixels at a time, and 0. So 0 is our y, is our up and down, our y. We don't want our player to be moving up and down. We want them constantly at the bottom of the screen. So this is just going to move them -5. So left, 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 until that the left-hand side of that rectangle is ever equal to 0, and then it won't allow us to do that anymore. And then you've probably guessed it, we're now going to do that for the right-hand side of the screen as well. So we're going to do if self.rect.right is less than the screen width, it means we're allowed to go in that direction. And the key pressed is the K right. So that's in Pygame, that's the right key. We're going to allow us to continue going right, which is going to be 5 pixels at a time. Okay, so I hope that kind of makes sense, and we can see why we're doing that. Obviously, if we're ever at that screen width, we don't want to be able to continually go off the side of the screen. So this means that we have to be less than the screen width in order to go right. So there's our left and right anyway. And the last thing we now need to do now is a function to allow us to draw. So we're going to do def draw, and it's going to be self window. And we are going to do window.blit, and it's going to be the image that we have and the onto the rectangle that we have. And obviously we've determined the rectangle's coordinates with all of this movement stuff, and we're constantly updating the coordinates of that rectangle, which constantly updates where that image is being drawn to. So that is our player class done now. So what we need to do now is we are going to be looking at doing the bullet class. So our player is going to fire a bullet. So we're going to do class bullets, and this again is going to be a pygame.sprite. And we do exactly the same again, so we're going to def underscore init, and it takes the player, because we need to know the position of the player in order to know the position of where the bullet is going to be. So you're going to take that as an argument, and then we're going to inherit all of the sprite attributes again, so super init There we go. So that allows us to inherit all of the sprite's attributes, all the sprite classes, methods and attributes, things like that, and use those. So our bullet's attributes needs an image. So I just made a little red square. You'll see it in all of the items in the GitHub folder, and it's called bullet.png. I'm sure you can make some much cooler looking bullets than that. It's going to need a surface, it's going to need a rectangle, and we're going to need that fired again there. So we're going to do self dot surf equals Pygame dot surface, and then this is going to be 10 by 10, so it's 10 pixels by 10 pixels. We're going to do self dot rect. It's going to equal, we're going to get the size of the surface to make the rectangle, so do self dot surf dot rect. So that gets the size of the rectangle we're going to make. We're going to make a rectangle of the size of the surface we've just made, and we're going to say the center of that rectangle is going to be equal to the player dot rect dot mid top. So the center of our bullet is going to be equal to the middle top point of the rectangle that we've actually drawn our player in. Okay. We're also going to have self dot fired, and that's going to equal false. Oh yeah, I put that up here, didn't I? We don't need it up here. It doesn't matter if you leave it up there, but you don't need it up there. That's what was confusing me. So let's get rid of that, because we're going to work out if it's fired here. Okay. And now we need some methods for moving it. So to move this is much simpler. So it's just going to be, basically it's going to move up the screen. So its x-axis is going to be wherever the player just was, so the rect mid top is always going to be there, and then we're just going to, whatever its y-axis currently is, which will be 600 if it's at the bottom of the screen, we're just going to keep minusing 5 from it. So if the bottom of the screen is 600, it's going to minus 5 to travel up to the screen until it gets to the top of the screen, which is 0. Okay, so it's a fairly straightforward bit of code for this one. We just do self.rect.move in place 0 and minus 5. So that 0 is going to be replaced with the player.rect.midtype, so wherever that player currently is, and so both of these are going to actually be that, but then the y-axis to get it to travel up the screen is wherever it currently is. 600, obviously, because it'll be at the bottom of the screen, is going to keep minusing 5 to it to get it to travel up to the top of the screen. And that's it, that's its movement done. And then we're just going to do a final one here, final method here to draw the bullet. Into def draw self, and where do we want to draw it to? It's the window. And we're going to do window.blit, and we're going to do self.image self.rect. And that's it, you know. And you can see now why I say that some people make a class just to render all this, because I've got 3 draw functions which are identical at the moment, but it doesn't particularly matter. So that's our player and our bullet now done. In the next video, we're going to actually look at making the background, and then we're going to start pulling the whole thing together and making a main loop. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that one, and the next video is going to kind of be the sort of the next point that we need before we start pulling the whole thing together. So click on that one if you want to see what happens next.